Hey everyone, Dr. Detweiler here from Hybrid Performance Group, doing a home live this week. No Elite FTS for me on Saturday and Sunday this week. My parents actually came up from Iowa to visit for the weekend, so I took my training, moved it all earlier in the week, and was able to clear out the weekend and kind of enjoy it and have them around, kind of show them around Columbus, hang out, get to spend some time with them. So this week we're going to be coming live from home. I'm not really going anywhere today, so I just wanted to take 20 minutes here real quick, go through a quick topic, so I can get back to enjoying their time and also cooking some awesome tomahawk steaks. I'm really excited about that. So my diet actually, I was just got done doing a pretty significant cut. I moved down from about 270 to about 227-ish, right there around Thanksgiving, and was going to go ahead and keep going for Christmas and see if I get a little lower, a little leaner, but decide here after Thanksgiving to kind of cut that out and go on more of a reverse out of the cut and see if I can put on a little bit of size and get back to getting some calories in my body. So, ironically, leading us then to the topic of the day, which is going to be just covering basic nutrition. I think it's a really good one here to maybe do a couple in a row on. Just considering we are getting into Christmas and people are going to start having that knack in the New Year's to see what they can make a couple changes in their life. So trying to give you some basic information on how you can, no weighing, just really basic stuff as far as how you can kind of maybe look at your nutrition a little bit and add some concepts and a little bit healthier nutrition choices. So again, we're just going to go over a brief overview today, probably give you an understanding and then a couple of just 3 quick tips on how to eat a little bit better throughout your meals. But again, this is not supposed to be something where all of a sudden you're weighing a bunch of food and taking a measuring cup to everything you do. It's just supposed to be something you can pick up and some easy basic nutrition concepts you can adapt and utilize here day one. So with that, the biggest thing that most people are trying to actually get accomplished when they get into nutrition is either they just want to be healthy, or they usually are trying to lose a little bit of fat or maybe gain some muscle, lean up, whatever that might be. The cool thing is if you really attack nutrition from a very basic standpoint, you can pretty much do both in the same kind of rules and the same kind of guidelines. So just kind of trying to lay out some of those guidelines for you guys and give you an idea of what that might look like. Should you be looking to kind of make that kind of a switch or just have a little bit more information on what you're putting in your body? So the biggest tip on nutrition is definitely utilizing quality whole foods. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to do like organic or anything, but the biggest thing you have to look at when you are trying to change nutrition or improve your nutrition is what's the quality of the food that you're eating, right? So when we do that, the purpose of that is making sure that when you're eating a certain item that you're able to ensure that item's having one variable in it, right? So if you're eating a protein, that the main variable that you're looking at there is protein. If you're eating fat, that the main variable there is fat. And if you're eating a carb, that the main variable there is carb. So for example, eating a muffin is not going to have any protein in it, but it's going to have, and it's going to be a carb source, but it's also going to have a lot of fat in it. So it's not exactly something you want to be utilizing as a carb source just because of the fact that you're having too many variables in there you're trying to keep track of. And you'll kind of see why this matters later. But again, so you're when you're looking at whole quality foods, you're basically looking at proteins, carbs, and fats. And then you definitely want to make sure you're getting in any kind of veggies or greens. Oh, hey, Clint. So basically that's kind of the concept you're going to be working on. So realistically, when we were talking about like what is a good lean protein, a good lean protein is going to be something that it doesn't really matter what animal you want to get. It's again just making sure that it's having a limited amount of fat in it, and it is something that doesn't have a bunch of added carbohydrates in. So if you're someone who likes chicken, cool, you can still have chicken. If you want fish, if you want beef, if you want pork, whatever, it's just making sure that when you're reading those labels that you're picking a protein that has a low amount of fat and a low amount of carbohydrates in that protein source. So like typically what I like to go off of is most protein sources are going to be somewhere around like 20 to 25 grams per serving as far as for protein. So what I like to do is go nothing more than about 4 or 5 grams of fat in that serving. The lowest you can go is great. Like a chicken breast is going to be almost no fat in it and all protein. But something like a fish or maybe depending on what kind of cut of pork you have, that might be something you have a little bit more fat in. But if it's something around the range of like 4 or 5 grams per that serving, that's pretty negligible, and you'll be okay with that. So again, doesn't really matter what type of meat you want to eat. It's usually more so make sure you're looking at the nutrition information on there, and that there's not a whole lot of added. It's not a fatty meat, and then that there's not a whole lot added sugars. A lot of times, like your hams or deli meats, you can look at those and it looks like it'll be all right, but the fat might be okay, but then you look and it's got 3 or 4 grams of carbohydrates in each serving. That's going to be kind of rough on you long term. Those are hidden calories, really. When I say variables, it's making sure there's no hidden calories in what you're doing. So for protein, that's a really good way to do it. Fats, you typically want to look at something like any nuts or nut butter, any oils like an olive oil, avocado oil, something more on that line. Definitely no vegetable oils, canola oil, anything like that. Peanut oil is okay, but those are kind of the lines to stick on. You can have grass-fed butter is probably like the best fat ever, I think, as far as taste. It adds a lot of taste to everything you do. So grass-fed butter is usually my go-to, and I think the Kerrygold is usually pretty solid. But for that fat, it's fairly moderate. Just depends on what your outlook is on nutrition. You can have people go back and forth on how much fat, but those are at least good sources for fat. So then the last one, or the last two being carbs and veggies. So carbs, again, the same kind of concept. You don't want that muffin. You want something that's a good whole food type carb. So examples of that would be like rice, potatoes, maybe like a bagel. Some breads are all right. Ezekiel bread's really good. But those are just kind of those examples. Pasta is not the worst thing in the world. You just won't overdo those types of meals. But again, the whole point is when you are eating a pasta or eating a bread, or you're eating some sort of carbohydrate, that you're making sure that it's actually all carbohydrates and not something that's 20 grams of carbs but then like 15 grams of fat or whatnot. So then you're having a lot of added variables, added calories that you're not really accounting for. So those are kind of just the outlines. Veggies, usually that's maybe a good place of where you can put that grass-fed butter in, or that fat, to kind of just use it to eat better with veggies. But veggies are pretty much, as long as you're not trying to count your potatoes as a veggie, like anything green, anything like a pepper, an onion, something like that, go after it, whatever you feel you like, mushrooms. Those are pretty good for you. So those you don't have as many limitations on. We do give you some guidelines here as we move forward. So those are your whole foods that you want to look at, and that should be the staple of everything you do. You should be eating whole foods as much as possible. If you can't, we'll get into some options as what you can do to kind of supplement for those whole foods. But we definitely want to be starting with good quality whole foods where we know the quality we're getting out of that food. From a is it a protein or is it a fat, or is it kind of both? Like again, like bacon is probably the same exact amount of fat as it is protein, so it's not a really good protein source. So the second tip, as far as with nutrition, just very basic nutrition, is making sure your frequency of eating is up. That you're eating enough throughout the day, but you're also eating frequently enough throughout the day. So most people tend to stick around the idea of eating 6 meals a day. And the purpose of eating 6 meals a day is really just to make sure that you're keeping that metabolism, that switch flipped over to the anabolic side, to where you're actually utilizing burning calories, burning fat, and being able to build muscle. So just as a little bit of a overview on that, so anabolic versus catabolic. Basically, like I just said, if you're in an anabolic state, you're in a position where your metabolism is cranked up. You are building muscle and you're burning fat. So that's where we want to have you as much as possible for obvious reasons, regardless of if you're goal is to lose weight, lose fat, or gain muscle, like that's the state we want you to be in. The catabolic state is the exact opposite, where we're not really burning energy, we're storing energy, so we're storing it as fat, and we're not really building any muscle. Your body's in a lesser metabolic state. It's not building anything at that point. So the reason why we're eating 6 meals a day is it's going to stimulate you to stay into that anabolic range, because we're constantly providing a fuel source that you can utilize. Your body can recognize that, hey, we're getting consistent food in, so it's okay, it's safe to be building and expending energy on bodily building processes. Rather than, if for example, it's like if you were starting a business or you own a business and you made a lot of money one month and then didn't see any money for 2-3 months, you would probably not be adding employees. You probably wouldn't be buying new equipment or doing anything like that. You'd probably be hankering down and saving some money. It's kind of the same concept, like just keeping a steady flow of income, right, of food or fuel source to the body kind of reinsures it that, hey, we can just keep moving forward with processes. We can build, we can create, we can heal, we can do everything we need to do, and we can do that at a high level because we know we're going to keep getting food. If you start starving your body for long periods of time, you're going to start saving that energy and not burning it, which is what we're looking for. And then when you do have a meal, you might be more likely to substitute that for a big meal all at once, which is not the greatest thing. So Clint has a question here. Are superfood greens good alternatives to be using compared to real vegetables, or the same? So we'll get to that in a little bit, but basically, yes, I want to save that question for a little bit later because, again, we start out with whole foods, like that's the best thing we want to do, but there are situations where if you maybe really hate broccoli or you really hate greens or you just don't have enough time to get those in, or if, basically you're already eating enough food to where you're just like, I don't really feel like eating more. There's definitely opportunities there where you can utilize those superfoods, those greens. There's products out there that you can utilize that are really good for providing that all-around source of the nutrients that you might be missing if you're not getting them in your food. But we'll get that to the last, kind of like the last point here and the last tip. So continuing on with why we're eating 6 meals a day. Again, that's kind of why we're doing that. Okay, so we're making sure that our body's constantly in that state of building and constantly in that state of production and growth, which is going to spike our metabolism, is going to burn more energy. So you're basically on a win-win in that situation. So when we're eating 6 meals a day, then the question gets to like, well, what needs to be in our meal portions, right? Like, what are we supposed to be eating? And what amount? So in those 6 meals a day, the very, very first concept we need to make sure we're taking care of is that we're eating protein in every single meal. The same concept we just went over of having availability of food to create that process of keeping us anabolic. On top of that, when we start talking about muscle growth or muscle metabolism, your muscles need to be in an anabolic state, or your body needs to be in an anabolic state in order for your muscles to start building more muscle. But the next thing you also need is you need availability of proteins in the bloodstream to be able to be there and present when it's time for you to start putting that muscle on. So a lot of people are actually missing out on possible, let's say, quote unquote gains. I hate that stupid shit to call it gains, but basically you're losing opportunities to where you could be putting muscle on just simply from the fact that when your body's ready, there's no protein, there's no building blocks in your bloodstream that's there for the muscle to be created. So the biggest thing is making sure we have protein at all times, because we don't get to choose when our body decides it wants to build muscle. It's just a matter of when that moment comes and it's ready to roll. If it doesn't have the amino acids it needs from that protein source, the whole foods that you should be eating, it's not going to be able to create muscle, so you miss an opportunity. Then on the fat loss side of that, muscle is going to burn more fat. Just by having more muscle, more lean mass, you're more metabolically active, which means you're going to burn more fat. So either way, it's a win-win for us to be having protein in there as a resource all the time. So the biggest start with that on portions is making sure you have a protein source. So, moving from that, then we start talking about all the other, factors and what I said on whole foods. So we still want to make sure you have a carb source. Definitely want to try to make sure you have veggies going on too. Again, we'll get into what happens if you either really, really are against veggies, or if you just don't have enough time or whatever it may be to get that in there. So, basically what you're going to do at that point is you're going to use a really quick measuring tool, which is going to be your own hand. Okay, so when we have that plate, we're going to utilize a palm size portion of protein in that meal. We're going to use a fist size portion of carbs and a fist size portion of vegetables. Again, the fat, try to keep it somewhat minimal, but fat's okay to have in there. Just don't go overboard on that. Some people say, use your thumb size worth of fat. But those are really good ways you can make sure the portions are going on correctly at the same time. So Clint asked again, the 30-minute window after working out, is that a myth where you need protein at that moment? No, that is not a myth whatsoever. That is absolutely true, that you're definitely wanting to, the most crucial time for you to be taking in protein is going to be right after your workout. And that means like a strength training workout or like a HIIT training workout, not necessarily like steady state cardio. But in that situation, again, it goes back to anabolic versus catabolic. When you train, it's actually a catabolic in nature because you are breaking down your body. So right after that strenuous workout's done, that's a great opportunity to be getting in basically a high quality protein. Usually what I recommend on that mindset is getting like a hydrolyzed whey protein, something that's going to absorb fast into your bloodstream, something that's going to be readily available to get into your muscles to again start that process of building more protein, more muscle right after that. In all honesty, realistically speaking, if your goal is though to be able to build size and gain muscle, you also want to make sure you have a carb source, a really fast digesting carb source, and that's going to basically fill your muscles full of glycogen and allow that protein to be better absorbed by the muscle. So again, in that situation, I know we just talked about whole foods being super important all the time, but in that situation, that's actually the one situation where a supplement is actually going to be better just from the bioavailability aspect. So there's definitely supplements out there that are really great for getting, like we said, the goal on that standpoint would be getting that protein and that carb source directly into the muscle as quick as possible, into the bloodstream, out of the bloodstream, and into the muscle for the sake of refilling the muscle and getting that growth to move forward. In that standpoint, like I'm a pretty big proponent of, from a taste perspective and a quality perspective, I'm a pretty big proponent of 1st Phorm's products. They have a great protein and then a carb source you can kind of, I guess, essentially stack together. That's their Ignition and their Formula One protein. We're actually going to talk about a different protein in a little bit, but the Formula One is make sure it's that one if you do choose to go that route. With a protein, make sure that it's like a hydrolyzed isolate protein, and all that means is basically that protein's broken down into such bite-sized portions that your body's able to absorb it, get it into the bloodstream, and get it into the muscle as quickly as possible, and not have to break that protein source down. So those are really good resources there to be going after. But yeah, so moving on to that, it was a great question. I'm definitely glad you asked that, Clint. So the last tip, I guess we talked about the portions. So the last tip being in that exact situation. So actually, we're kind of jumping right into it. It's a perfect time for that. Really speaking, I didn't finish the rest of it. So protein is going to be your hand, right? So protein's your hand, and then palm-sized portion of veggies and carbs, and then again the fat. If you want to go with something on your hand to measure that out, use like the size of your thumb. So again, it's kind of nice based on your size of an individual. It's going to change the size of what kind of food you're eating. And unfortunately, if you're a giant with small hands, I don't know what to tell you. I'm sure there's plenty of jokes someone else can say about having small hands and being a big guy, but you won't hear from me. Anyways, so the very last question then being, if we talked about whole foods like we did talk about one scenario where it would be good to have a supplement. We get into supplementation in this last topic or last tip. What if you're someone, let's say that you work in a location where you can't bring whole foods with you, you don't have storage, or you need something that you're in a situation where you're not able to have 6 meals readily available, you don't have time to eat them, whatever that reason may be. You actually are trying to eat, like you should. You're trying to stay on something like this as just a basic nutrition profile, and you can't quite get that that requirement in. The first thing you could do is, if you can get 5 meals in of whole foods, go ahead and do that, right? Just kind of imagine that as if those are 6 servings, 6 meals, just take that 6th meal and divide that out throughout the rest of the 5 meals. So if that's the case, that's a really easy way. Like, hey, the next question is, could you just get 5 in? Can we take the 6 and kind of divide it up? If the answer is still kind of no, we're like, man, I can maybe get 4 in if I'm lucky. Now that's a situation where we look at finding a supplement that's going to provide that that availability to still get the nutrition in, those variables, the quality nutrition in, to keep yourself still anabolic. Because again, remember, if we're waiting, if we're missing 2 meals, that's 6 hours, maybe more, where your body is not flipped over to anabolic. It's not burning fat, and it's in a situation where, hey, if I do need to, put on some, if my body decides I want to put on some muscle now at this time, it's going to look into your bloodstream and go, oh, well, never mind, I don't have any protein in my bloodstream, so I guess we'll skip that. So you are missing out on opportunities there as far as optimizing your success. You're definitely missing that opportunity there, and that's the situation where we start talking about supplementation. So in that situation, again, I'm just a big proponent of First Form. I think their products are pretty much, because they're an FDA inspected facility, you're getting what's on the label. There's no added fillers and stuff like that. And then on top of that, their product tastes awesome. They have a long process of how they create their proteins and how they make their products. They're definitely, when you're starting to talk about the nutrition world, they're definitely up on top as far as their quality in their product. And again, if you're going to put whole quality foods in you, why don't you put a whole quality supplement in you? So that's a situation you could use a protein shake. So I mentioned the Formula 1 before. Now remember, that was something that is supposed to be really bioavailable for your body, so it's going to get into your bloodstream really quick with that hydrolyzed isolate. Again, it just means it's broken down to bite-sized bits. It gets into the stomach, it gets into the bloodstream, it gets into your muscles, it gets out, right? So that's going to be great for post-workout, but there is a need for a different kind of protein that's going to have, when you're looking at that situation, there is a need for a protein that's going to be a little bit more, less bite-sized. You want the body to have to spend a little bit more energy to break that down. It's going to expend more energy, so that's more calories it's going to take to break down that protein. But then B, what you'll notice is on something like the Formula 1, if you drink that in 45 minutes, you will be hungry as hell. Like, you will be literally trying to, you'll be about ready to feel like you're passing out. If you know what hypoglycemic is, like, you'll be hypoglycemic. You'll be kind of like, feel a little bit woozy, like, dude, I need to get some food in me now. I need to eat. So we don't want that when we're looking at something where it's a meal replacement, because again, we want that to sustain in the bloodstream, to be available for muscle growth when that time comes, for a long period of time. So in that situation, I'm going to be a proponent of them and their level 1, and that's what that protein is. But at the end of the day, it's you got to have something that's going to be sustainable long term. But that's what I would utilize. And then for me, I actually find that I can still get my carb and my fat source in that shake. I'm a huge fan of oatmeal flakes and a protein with like a whey protein shake, and then like a little bit of peanut butter is probably one of the better meals that I think you can have. So I'm excited about that with my refeed, actually being able to have that again, because I've been pretty low carb, especially on non-training days up until this point. So those are some basic nutrition guidelines. Getting back to the greens, that's again another opportunity. Like we said, the biggest concept of nutrition you need to understand is the very first point I made, which is whole foods is king. There's nothing that's going to replace whole foods except for that post-workout window. But you got to start there. But again, if you can't get it done, we go, okay, well, it's our second best option. So again, on the vegetables, if you can't quite get that in, like there's definitely supplements that have all the your micronutrients that you would get from like a veggie, or you get like from fruits, that are put into one. Again, it's just a shakeable powder, and you can put that into a drink and have that throughout the day. Again, First Form I think makes one. It's Optigreens, which is, again, it's just purely, I think there's some probiotic factors in there too, so for digestive health that'll definitely help as well. But that would be a situation when you use that. If not, and you are totally down for eating a bunch of veggies, awesome, more power to you. I'm a fan of veggies. It's just sometimes when you do start to get eaten more, you don't necessarily want to eat as much, or you are forgetting, or you have to cook them. So it's always a good option just to have there. But yeah, those are pretty much your three big keys. Make sure you're eating whole foods. Try to get more meals a day for the same reasons we just talked about, of being able to build, keep your body in a state of building muscle and burning fat. And then the last one being, if you're too busy and you can't get the whole foods and get those in 6 times a day, then look into some sort of supplementation at that point. But that's definitely not the first place to start. You definitely want to start with the 2, and then again, just filling the gaps in where your nutrition is currently. So that's kind of what I got for you guys. If you have any questions, even if it's more into like, actually, hey, I want to get into what are some guidelines for actually weighing out and counting my macros, and what are guidelines to start there, definitely feel free to reach out to me for that. Like, that's pretty much what I've done for, I think, the last probably 8-10 years. So I mean, I could definitely have some good tips for people that are still trying to do their own nutrition, but want some help on how to do that and be a little more in depth on that process. Sometimes those type A personalities really like having that like everything detailed type situation. So but feel free, if you have any other questions on the nutrition topic, if you have any questions about the First Form products, I definitely have a link I can give you. You can check out more information. I can let you know about what they do, but they're actually pretty well known, so I'd be surprised if you haven't heard of them. But if you want any more information, feel free to let me know. And yes, this is why I'm not texting you back, Clint. And if you want to reach out to me as well, obviously on my Instagram here right now, but Facebook as well, at Tyrell Detweiler on Facebook. And then feel free to check out our Hybrid Performance website too. I haven't been pushing that enough, but it's hybrid-performance.net. We'll be putting on blogs and a lot of different content on there as well. Plus you can get a little bit more learning about our clinic and how we do things. But yeah, again, look for, if you're on Instagram, look for a link to be in my bio, kind of a link to some of those different products from First Form that I was just talking about. And I think through that link you can also get some free shipping on their products through that link, if you are looking to kind of add that supplementation into what you're already doing. But what I will say is, if you're not using these first 2 principles first, don't even worry about that. You need to start looking at the quality of food you're eating, and you need to start looking at the meals you're eating. So all right, everyone, have a good Sunday. I'm going to go see what my steaks are doing right now. I hope to God I didn't run over and they're all shitty now, but they're tomahawk steaks. They can't be that bad. All right, later.